The Sigma female shadow side isn't loud. It doesn't explode. It doesn't seek revenge. In fact, most people never see it at all, but when it appears, usually after betrayal, disrespect, or repeated boundary violations, it leaves a permanent psychological imprint. Not because of what she does, but because of what she withdraws. And once someone experiences that side of her, they never forget it. This isn't a video about revenge fantasies or toxic traits rebranded as empowerment. This is about the moment someone realizes they've been severed from access they didn't know was a privilege. What I'm about to explain will reframe everything you think you know about strength, silence, and psychological impact. Most people misread the Sigma female because they observe surface behavior while the real architecture exists beneath. They see calm and assume passivity. They see silence and assume she has nothing to say. They see distance and assume emotional absence. What they're actually witnessing: containment. She's not empty. She's full but regulated. There's a difference between having no reaction and choosing not to display one. The Sigma female operates with an internal locus of control that most people never develop. She processes privately what others broadcast publicly. Her shadow side doesn't exist in spite of this containment. It exists because of it. Consider pressure in a closed system. The energy doesn't disappear. It accumulates, transforms, and when the system finally opens, not from explosion, but from deliberate release, what emerges is not chaos. It's precision. The shadow side isn't her losing control. It's her changing what she controls. And that shift, from managing herself around you to managing herself away from you, is what becomes unforgettable. What this is not: yelling at someone in a parking lot, posting cryptic Instagram stories, going off on someone in a group chat. Those are reactions. This is something else entirely. It's clarity without softness. Boundaries without explanation. Detachment without hostility. Someone who used to receive her time, attention, and emotional availability suddenly receives neutrality. Not coldness, neutrality. She doesn't insult them. She doesn't ignore them dramatically. She simply stops investing. The conversation becomes functional. The warmth disappears. The access is revoked. The disturbing part: there's nothing to argue against. She's not angry, so you can't apologize your way back in. She's not hurt, so you can't comfort your way back in. She's done. Done has a permanence that anger never does. Anger is a negotiation. It says, "You hurt me, and I need you to acknowledge it." Done says, "I've acknowledged it for both of us. We're finished." People remember it more vividly than any argument they've ever had. The argument gives them something to hold. This gives them nothing but absence. Most people are filtered out long before they reach this side of her. She's not reactive. She's observational. She watches patterns, not incidents. She gives people the benefit of context. She self-regulates because she knows her own intensity and doesn't wield it carelessly. When someone makes a mistake, she absorbs it, quietly recalibrates, gives space for growth. When someone crosses a boundary once, she notices, but doesn't escalate. She might even communicate it calmly. When someone shows inconsistency, she doesn't confront immediately. She files it, watches for patterns. This is why the shadow side feels sudden to people who trigger it. From their perspective, everything was fine. They got away with small disrespects. They tested boundaries and nothing happened. They minimized her concerns and she didn't fight back. But she wasn't letting it go. She was deciding. Behind that calm exterior, she was running a cost-benefit analysis, not coldly, but self-protectively. Is this person safe for my energy? Are they learning or testing? Am I being valued or being convenient? The shadow side doesn't activate after a betrayal. It activates after a pattern of erosion, after she's given someone every chance to course correct, and they've chosen not to. By the time they experience her withdrawal, she's already spent weeks, sometimes months, processing what they'll only begin to understand once she's gone. The real triggers erode trust at a foundational level. Repeated disrespect. Not a one-time offense. Not a bad day. The kind that keeps reappearing in different forms. The person who forgets what matters to you, who dismisses your needs as overreactions, who makes you feel like you're asking for too much when you're asking for basic decency. Boundary testing. When someone sees where your line is, and then inches over it, then does it again, then acts confused when you finally enforce it. They're not confused. They're recalibrating how much they can take without consequences. Emotional minimization. Being told you're too sensitive when you express a need. Being told you're overthinking when you notice a pattern. Being made to feel like the problem is your perception, not their behavior. Being forced to over-explain. When you have to break down why something hurt you into manageable pieces for someone who should already understand. When you're made to perform emotional labor to justify your own boundaries. When I need space gets met with, but why, instead of respect. The key distinction. One mistake does not activate the shadow side. She understands context. But persistent erosion? That's different. Persistent erosion means one of two things. Either the person doesn't care, or they care but not enough to change. Both conclusions lead to the same outcome. She stops making herself available to be eroded. This is where most people miscalculate her. They think because she's been patient, she'll be patient forever. They mistake her self-regulation for infinite tolerance. Patience isn't passivity. Understanding has a limit. The unsettling part isn't what she does. It's what she stops doing. They reach out casually, like always, and the response is polite, functional. But the warmth is gone. The curiosity, the engagement. They make a joke, she doesn't laugh. Not hostilely, just doesn't react. They try to start a deeper conversation. She keeps it surface level, doesn't offer anything personal, doesn't ask follow-up questions. They try to make plans, she's busy. Not passive-aggressively, she's just not prioritizing them anymore. What makes it disorienting? No anger to apologize to, no tears to comfort, no heated argument to resolve, just distance. Neutral, clean, impenetrable distance. Humans are wired to respond to emotional cues. We know how to handle anger, we apologize, we explain, we negotiate. We know how to handle sadness, we comfort, we reassure, we promise to do better, but we don't know how to handle indifference, especially not from someone who used to care deeply. It breaks every prediction model we have. There's no script for, this person has emotionally divested from me and there's nothing I can do about it. This is why it stays with them. Not because she was cruel, because she was final. Anger leaves room for reconciliation. Indifference closes the door. Once someone realizes that door is closed, that no amount of apologizing, explaining, or love bombing will reopen it, it changes how they see themselves in relation to her. They're no longer someone she's navigating around. They're someone she's navigated past. The reason this lingers isn't heartbreak. It's identity disruption. When someone experiences her withdrawal, they're not just losing access to her. They're losing the reflected version of themselves they got to be around her. When she's invested in someone, she sees them, really sees them. She pays attention to the details. She remembers what matters to them. She creates space for them to be authentic. In that space, people often become the best version of themselves, more honest, more reflective, more seen than they've been elsewhere. But when the shadow side emerges and that access is revoked, they don't just lose her. They lose that version of themselves, and they can't get closure on it. Closure requires a narrative, a conversation, where both people express their feelings, reach understanding, and move forward. She's not offering that conversation. She's not angry enough to argue, not hurt enough to explain, not interested enough to process it with them. She's moved on internally, and she's not bringing them along for that journey. They're left with questions they'll never get answered. When did she decide I wasn't worth it? What did I do that was so unforgivable? How can someone who cared so much suddenly care so little? The deeper disruption. They realize she didn't suddenly care less. She cared the entire time. She just stopped showing it. And eventually, stopped feeling it. That's unsettling. It means she had the capacity to walk away the whole time. She chose not to until she chose to. This forces self-reflection most people aren't prepared for. It's easier to blame someone for being cold or heartless than to confront the reality that you pushed someone past their tolerance threshold. The shadow side isn't empowering. It's expensive. Walking away with that level of finality doesn't come from cruelty. It comes from self-preservation that required her to override every instinct to connect, to repair, to give one more chance. That leaves a mark. What it costs her: emotional isolation. Once you've detached that completely from someone, reconnecting becomes difficult, even with people who didn't hurt you. You've proven to yourself that you can function without deep connection. That proof becomes both strength and cage. Difficulty trusting the process again. When you've watched someone slowly erode your boundaries and had to cut access, you become hyper-aware of early warning signs in new relationships. Not bitter, vigilant. And that vigilance can make vulnerability harder. Increase selectivity. Once you realize how much energy you were spending on people who didn't value it, you become ruthlessly selective about where your energy goes. Healthy but also lonely. Most people don't meet the standard, loneliness at higher awareness. The more you understand your own patterns, boundaries, worth, the fewer people feel like safe investments. Not because you're arrogant, because you're no longer willing to shrink or over-explain or tolerate erosion. What people don't see: she doesn't want to be this way. She'd rather live in a world where people respected boundaries the first time, where she didn't have to become a fortress, where emotional availability didn't feel like a risk. But she's learned through pattern recognition that some people only understand the language of consequences, and the consequence for repeatedly violating her boundaries isn't drama. It's disappearance. The shadow side isn't a power move. It's a survival mechanism, and it comes with its own kind of grief. The shadow side doesn't appear after one bad day. It doesn't appear because someone forgot her birthday or said something thoughtless. It appears after restraint, after patience, after multiple attempts to communicate, after weeks or months of self-regulation, recalibration, and hoping the person would choose differently. Silence wasn't her first option. It was her last. When people accuse her of being cold or unforgiving, they're missing the entire context. She didn't arrive at detachment impulsively. She arrived there through a process of elimination. She tried engaging, didn't work. She tried communicating, wasn't heard. She tried creating space for change. Change didn't come. At some point she realized, I can't make someone value me, and I won't exhaust myself trying. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. She doesn't apologize because protecting your peace after someone repeatedly disrespected it isn't wrong. It's ethical. What makes her different? She doesn't weaponize her shadow side. She doesn't use it to punish. She doesn't broadcast it for validation. She implements it, quietly, completely, and moves forward. The person left behind often wonders what happened. From the outside, it looks sudden. From her perspective, it was the most deliberate decision she's made in months. She doesn't need them to understand it. She doesn't need them to agree with it. She doesn't even need them to acknowledge it. She just needs to protect herself from further erosion. And she will. The question people ask: can you repair a relationship once the shadow side has been activated? The honest answer? Rarely. Not because she's holding a grudge, not because she's incapable of forgiveness, but because the shift that happened wasn't just behavioral. It was perceptual. She stopped seeing that person as safe. Once that lens shifts, it's almost impossible to shift it back. Why? When she withdraws, it's not an emotional reaction she needs to cool down from. It's a conclusion she arrived at through observation and pattern recognition. She didn't feel her way out of the relationship. She thought her way out. You can't unthink a realization. You can't unsee a pattern. You can't unknow that someone repeatedly chose their comfort over your boundaries. People think apologies will fix it, but an apology addresses a moment. What she's responding to is a mosaic of moments that formed a picture she can no longer unsee. Could the relationship be repaired? Theoretically, but it would require the person to recognize not just what they did, but the pattern of what they did. Genuine behavior change over time, not performative change to win her back. Respect for the fact that even with change, she might choose not to re-engage. Most people aren't willing to do that work without the guarantee of reconciliation. They want to apologize and have things go back to normal, but she's not interested in normal. Normal is what led here, so the shadow side remains, not as punishment, as protection. The person who triggered it is left with a permanent reminder. Some doors, once closed, Don't reopen. The Sigma female shadow side isn't something you meet accidentally. You don't stumble into it. You don't trigger it by surprise. It appears after access has been repeatedly abused. After patience has been repeatedly tested, after boundaries have been repeatedly dismissed. It leaves because self-respect finally outweighed the hope that the person would change. And it's remembered not because it was dramatic, but because it was final. Most people spend their lives experiencing conditional anger. Someone gets upset, you apologize, you move forward. It's transactional. It's familiar. But the shadow side isn't anger. It's the absence of investment. And that absence is far more unsettling than any confrontation could ever be. It doesn't give you anything to fix. It doesn't give you closure. It doesn't even give you the satisfaction of a reaction. It removes you from the equation. Once you've been removed, you realize how much of a privilege access to her actually was, rarely seen, never forgotten.